Let me pick up on some of what my colleague was just talking about, because a number of people are having difficulty, particularly at their pharmacies, based on some of the new rules or regulations that have come out. In fact, I was standing in my local pharmacy waiting to get some drugs for my son a couple of months back, and there was a lady there getting some medication for her mother, and a local judge getting some medication for his wife who just had surgery. And the pharmacist, while I was standing there, had to inform both of them that they had used up their allotment under the DEA's new regulations of those particular types of drugs, and they would have to come back next week. Now, wasn't a problem for the judge. He was coming in, a little early so that he didn't have that pressure and that she would have the medication she needed. But for the lady who was getting drugs for her mom, it was very stressful. She says, "My mother needs this medication. I promised them I would look into it. What do I tell them? I mean, what are we doing to make sure that these folks are heard from and that the drugs are available when there's a valid prescription for a valid patient who presents that to a pharmacist?"
We talked to the pharmacists about this. The pharmacists are being told by their distributors that DEA is setting up a quota. There is no quota. There's never been a quota when it comes to distributors. I defy anybody to show me where there's a quota. The fact is we ask the distributors to know their customers and ensure that the drugs they're sending downstream are, if it's a suspicious order, that it's reconciled before it's sent. But there's never been a quota to going downstream from wholesaler to pharmacies. The pharmacists are reporting this. That's what they're being told, but we're not telling them that.
Well, can you figure out why it is that that's happening? I mean, are you all making the distributors worry about it so that if this particular pharmacy deals mostly, not exclusively obviously, but mostly with older patients, because it's been there in one form or another on Main Street in Salem, Virginia for about 100 years. And so a lot of their folks are people that have been in the community for a long time. Some of them are fourth generation, et cetera, but some of them are also older, which means you're going to have probably more of those prescriptions. I think maybe that you all need to talk with the distributors again and make sure that, if it's a long-term situation, that drugstore may be a little higher than the CVS down the street just because they've been there forever. So their population by definition is going to be an older population.
And I understand that. And DEA does not want anybody to go without their medication if they're a legitimate patient. But the problem is I have no control to tell a distributor to distribute to a pharmacy. And the fact is that if they just complied with the Act and complied with the regulations, there wouldn't be a problem.
Well, clearly there's confusion somewhere, and I hope you'll work with us to get that resolved. Let me move to another subject now that involves the DEA and also may involve pain medication. Most people are unaware of this. And let me state right up front, I do not support recreational use of marijuana. But believe it or not, Virginia has the oldest medical marijuana law on the books. It was passed in 1979, either with the hope that the DEA was going to come around and say these are certain legitimate uses, or in the hopes of encouraging the DEA to do that. But it was passed in 1979. It's 18.2.251.1. And right now, it, as I think, is the proper way to deal with medicinal marijuana. It requires a valid prescription from a valid physician, and then it has to be taken to the pharmacist to be filled. Virginia set the construct up, and they did it just for cancer and glaucoma because in 1979, that's all the evidence would have justified. So they were trying to work within the construct of the federal law and the DEA. Needless to say, no doctor in his right mind or her right mind is going to prescribe it, because that'd get them in all kinds of trouble with the DEA. But when is the DEA going to take a look at medicinal marijuana? Forget the crazy laws, as I sometimes call them, that California has passed and some other states that make it open, but a law that would allow the legitimate use of marijuana, smoked marijuana as well, not just the pill form, for purposes of relieving people on any number of areas, but particularly on cancer and glaucoma, because we know that science has been out there for decades.
Well, I think I'll answer it, and then I'm sure my colleague would love to answer it as well. We have a maybe not. We have a
well, our impediment is DEA won't allow it.
A petition process where a person could petition the government to reschedule, or move through the schedules any drug. Now, in the case of marijuana, there's several factors, but one is it's based on approval as a medicine. And FDA has looked at this twice now, I believe. And the science is not there. There's no scientific evidence that shows that smoked marijuana is beneficial as a medicine.
Well, and let me say, because my time is running out, I haven't ever used marijuana recreationally or otherwise, but I will tell you that I have numerous constituents who feel that it has been of assistance to them. And I tell a story when I go out and talk to people. Decades ago, I knew somebody who was having a problem with cancer. And the story was told to me at the time by some of his friends that the doctors put on his chart, nobody goes in this room from 11 to 12 and then bring his food at 12, because the doctors recognized that that would give him some relief. He was trying to stay alive as long as he could so he could see his 2-year-old child just a few more days. Every day he could get was important. I'm telling that story in a high school group, what I call my high school town halls. This kid raises his hand up, and I thought it was going to be some question about, well, what about recreational use? And he says to me, they did that for my daddy too. And I was in a different part of my district, and my district is about 4 hours long. There's no way that could have been any way close, plus the kid was way too young. It wasn't the same deal. So we've got doctors out there who are recognizing it. Further, I would submit there's a Washington Post article that says that it's difficult to get permission to even do the scientific studies because of DEA. So I ask you to work on that, because that's a serious issue, and the American people support it for legitimate use, not abuse, not recreational, but for legitimate use. I yield back.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Lance, 5 minutes for question.